The next thing we want to do is basically we want to, when we have the logic in the middleware where if you try to go anywhere, it's going to force you to log in. But because of that webhook issue that I told you about syncing our state with our users, we need to find a way to do that. So we're going to do that with a server-side component. So you route to the component, it's going to do all that syncing for us. That's going to be in new user. However, I was having an issue with forcing the sign up page to redirect to new user after sign up. I don't think these props work the way they're supposed to work, but I do have like multiple workarounds. I'll explain the workarounds and then we'll pick one. So one workaround is we actually don't even have to render a sign up page at all because Clerk has a hosted sign up page that we can use if we don't have this in our app. Basically, if we just get rid of this route and the middleware will redirect to sign in, it'll go to the hosted page, which will then fix our issue most likely. I think that's what I had on the previous build, which is why it was working. I don't really like that. So I think the other way we can do it is we can just, we can check inside the home page to see if you already signed in or not. If you are, we'll send you to Journal. We'll make this href dynamic. If you are already signed in, we'll send you to Journal. If you aren't signed in, then we will send you to new user, which will then trigger the auth to kick up because new user is an authenticated route. And then it'll ask you to sign in. And because you went to new user, the redirect URL will be stuck on new user and it'll send you back to new user as a signed in person this time. And then it'll do all the syncing. So that was a lot of explanation, but I think that's the way we're going to do it. So we have more control over it. Hopefully it works. I haven't tried it yet, but in theory, that should work. Yeah. If not, we'll just do the hosted page. So let's try it. Alrighty. So first things first is let's check for the user in here. It's actually really simple to do that. We can do the git, what is it called? Git clerk. No, it's, actually, you know what? I don't have to guess. It's here. It is, actually, so they have a lot of them actually. So they have current user, which is the one that we probably want to get. We can actually just use auth too. That's probably a better one. So let's do that. So what we'll do is we'll get auth. So we can say auth at the top here, import auth from clerk next.js. And if you haven't had an intro to Next.js 13 and server components, me putting async right here is probably going to blow your mind. But I can put an async right here on this component and it works fine because it's only running on the server. It's not a client component. It's just a regular function. So that's pretty cool. So then inside of here, I can just say await auth like this. And I should be able to get back a user ID. So then I can say, I'll do something like this. Let href equals, I'll just assume that you are not signed in. So I'll make it go to new user. But if user ID, then href should equals journal. Guess I could just put this on one line. It's bothering me, so I'm going to put it on one line. So user ID. So if you are logged in, we'll go to journal. And otherwise, we'll go to /new user. I could probably even move this down here too with async await. That's actually kind of crazy to think about. I've never done that. Let me see. You could probably just do await auth. Like that. And that would work too. Kind of crazy. I'm not going to do that. No one's ever going to approve that pull request. So just don't do it. Don't be that person that's like, whoa, I could, so I did. Like, no one's ever going to approve that. And if they do, they're crazy too. Like, go work with somebody else. And then just come out here and bind that to href. And now that'll be dynamic.
I'm still on the async component.
Right? It's so clean, right? It's so clean. This is when I first learned server-side rendering in like 2015, this is what I thought it was. And it wasn't. So now I'm like, okay, this makes sense. Like, this is what I thought server-side rendering was, but no, it wasn't. Okay, so we got that. Now we can kind of check it. So I don't think I'm logged in. I might have a cookie. We'll see. Yeah, so if I hover over this, it says journal. So I think that's because I might have like a cookie in here where I was already logged in. Yeah, I do. So let me delete that. Delete that. Let me refresh. So now when I hover over it, you can see it says it goes to new user. So I don't have that cookie anymore. So what we want to do is now we want to go to this new user page and we want to do a few things. So first we want to check, well, you can't get to this page unless you're authenticated. So we don't really need to check to see if you are authenticated, but I guess it wouldn't hurt. So what we basically, the agenda here is, hi, if you got to this page, that means you are indeed a brand new user. So we're going to check in the database to see if there's not a user with this clerk user ID. If there isn't, create that user with a clerk user ID and do any initialization that we need for that new user, like a new Stripe account, a new project, new org, whatever you do for your app, do that here. If the user already exists, then somehow you got to this page and you're already a user. So we'll just redirect you to Journal. You can get out of here. And that's the goal, right? So let's do that. And this is a server component, so we can do all that on the logic. So let's bring in our database. So we'll say Prisma from utils Prisma. Make sure you import the one from the one that we made, not the one from @Prisma. And if you're curious, like how I'm able to do this @ here, that's free because in our TS config, we have this path setup right here that says anything is a alias for the root / the matching anything. So I can say @ and that basically puts me at the root of my folder / anything. You can set up more here if you want to. You just got to make sure you do something called base URL or is it base path? No, I guess it's base URL. You gotta add like a base URL here, just like dot, if you want to set up more. It'll tell you if you don't. Cool, Prisma. And then let's just make some functions here. So we'll make a function that says, create new user, like so. And then we'll use the same auth thing that we have from Clerk. This will give us that user ID. So we can say, and this will be async, await auth. This will give us a user ID here. So now we have our user ID. Then what we want to do is just go and see if there is a user in the database with this user ID or not, right? So now we can say, is there a match here? So we can say await. And this is where Prisma is really cool. So now I can say Prisma dot, and you can see it knows that I have a user. It knows that I have a journal entry. It knows that I have an analysis. It just knows all that because it's type checked. So Prisma dot user, and I can say find. Let's do find unique because I'm looking for a unique. I'm searching by a unique property. I can pass in an object, and I can say where, which is another object. In this case, where clerk ID is user ID, like so. And you'll just get a TypeScript error here saying like, oh, well, user ID might be null, and this has to be a string. You can just ignore it, or if you really wanted to be safe, you could just say, well, it's a string. So we're gonna do that, and then we're gonna say, oh, if not a match, because by default, this won't throw an error if it doesn't find it. If you wanted to, you can say find unique or throw, and then it will throw an error if it doesn't find it. I don't want it to throw an error if it doesn't find it because I need to do some logic if it doesn't find it. So I would just catch that error anyway. So just don't even throw it. So if there isn't a match, then this is a brand new user because we have this clerk ID and it's not in our database. So either they went into their console, found all the appropriate JSON Web Tokens and cookies and IDs and added it in the console and then went to this route. This is probably a new user. So if they did that, they deserve that. They deserve it. Whatever they're trying to get, they deserve it. So, yeah. So now we'll say, user equals await prisma.user.create. And for whenever you do a create, you can just do data, which is an object, and then pass in all the things that a user needs. And it'll tell you if you hover over it. Well, it kind of tells you. It's like very abstracted away, but it's the same thing you wrote in your schema. So if you forgot, just go look at your schema and you can see that a user needs a clerk ID, an email, and entries is an empty array, so we don't have to put anything in there. Okay, so we need an email. So this is where we want current user here. This will be user. And I guess we probably should do a check here because this should never happen because this is an authenticated page through the middleware. So you should never be able to get to this page. Like this should never be null because there's no way you should have gotten to this page without being authenticated. So I know you are at least authenticated. I'm just trying to figure out if you're a new user or not because this page won't load because our middleware will block you because I didn't make that a public. I didn't go in here and say, oh yeah, new user is a public page. I didn't do that. So you can't get there unless you're authenticated. So I can make that assumption. So there's no need for me to do a check here to see if you are logged in. You are, unless my middleware failed. And if that's the case, I got bigger problems. So I don't need to do a check there. And then I can just come down here and say user.id, like that. This thing's still gonna freak out because that might be null. It's not, but it's still gonna freak out. And then here, clerk ID is user.id, and then email is user.okay. Can you stop doing that? Email. I think it's user.email. We'll see. And it looks like I'm not gonna be able to call it user because I have a user here. So I'll just call this new user, like that. It says user does not exist on type user. So what does exist on user then? Let's see. Show me. I guess we'll just log it and we'll see. That's the best way. That's how you do. Oh wait, is it gonna show all my personal stuff? We'll see. Because I did log in with Google, but I don't think there's. We'll see. I got nothing to hide. All right, so we'll do that. We got a new user. It's got the clerk thing. I don't have any additional setup that I need, but this is where you would do Stripe. And like I said, any initial setup that you need for a user, you would do it here on site. This is basically your sign up, right? So we have that new user. Once all that is done, we don't even really need to save that anywhere. So we could just await it. And now what happens is once we get past this, we're basically in the same state. So once we already created a user, we're in the same state as if there was no match. We're in the same state as if there was a match. So you are basically our current user in our database now. So we can just go down to after this if statement and we can redirect now, right? So now we can just be like, yeah, cool. Let's just redirect. Redirect. I know there's a redirect in there somewhere. But, what is all this stuff? Let's see. I think the redirect from next. Let's go see.
From next navigation.
That's what I thought, but I couldn't remember if that was only client side or not. But I guess that does work on the server side. I just wanted to verify with what I had. Yeah, I guess that, I don't know why I thought that only worked on the client side. Huh. That's awesome. Okay, good for them. That's probably why they recommend it now. So navigation, and then redirect. This thing needs a from, that's why. Okay. And then now we can just say, yeah, cool. Now redirect to journal. So we got create user. We don't need auth anymore. I mean, we could show like a loading spinner here if we want, but It doesn't really matter. There's really no UI concept here. We're basically using this page as an API route, if you think about it, but it's just happening on the server. And then now I can just call the function, right? I could just be like, yeah, cool, async, and then just like awaits, create new user. Cool. I'm guessing user doesn't have email, so we'll figure out what that is in a second, but everything else should be good. Yes.
Message from the chat that user.email addresses is the property, and it returns an array of emails associated with the user.
Got it. User.email addresses turns an array. Huh. I think I probably had that somewhere already. Oh yeah. Looks like I had an auth file that basically did that. Yeah. Email addresses.
Yeah, line 25 there.
Yep. Okay. That makes sense. Let's try that. So user.email addresses 0.email address. I think it's always going to be the first. In this case, we only have Google or whatever, so it's always going to be like that one. And this is just going to freak out because this could be undefined, but there's no way you could have became a clerk user without having an email. Because either you had to pick Google, which means you have an email, or you had to sign up with email, which means you have an email. So this will always be defined, but obviously the SDK doesn't know that. So it'll still run. It's just a TypeScript error. Okay, so now we have that. We create new user. Let's see what happens. So, and then we should get a 404 because we haven't made the journal page yet. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna hover over this. I'm not signed in, so it's telling me to go to new user. If I click this, it should go to new user or attempt to go to new user, but the middleware is going to intercept it and be like, nah, you got to sign in. Then I'll click sign up. I'll then sign up. That should redirect me back to new user. And the new user will create me a new user in the database, which will then redirect me to journal. Hopefully. It's a lot of work. Let me also just make sure I deleted myself from clerk. I did not. So you can just come here and delete yourself to be a new user again. And actually, I don't think that affects how this works, but just doing it anyway. Okay, let's give it a try. So click get started. Boom, middleware automatically redirects us. We can see the redirect URL is indeed pointing us to new user, so that's good. I'm gonna click sign up. I'm gonna continue with Google. Gonna log in with my Googles. It went to new user. New user waited for a minute and boom, it redirected me to journal. So it worked exactly like we said it was gonna work. So that's why I was like, you can probably show a loading screen there if you wanted to, because I knew it was gonna pause for a little bit because it's going to clerk to get the user, and then it's going to our database to create the user. So I knew there's gonna be a little pause there. So you can show a loading animation there or whatever you want. I can show you how you can get that for free. In fact, if you took the intro course, you know all you have to do is make a loading file in here and you get that for free. So, but we're not gonna do that right now. Okay, that works. Let's verify some things. So if we go into, let's go look at our database. So to look what's in our database, npx Prisma Studio. This is gonna launch an app on where we can look at all the things in our database. You can see I indeed have one user in there. And that user is me. There's my email. I have no journal entries. Here's my clerk ID and all the other things. So it works. Right? And now if I go back home, if I hover over that button, it should just send me to journal and never to a new user. So it just goes to journal because I'm logged in. Cool. Any questions on that? This is the easiest auth you're ever gonna make, I'm gonna tell you right now. It doesn't get easier than this. I remember having to roll auth from scratch using, and this is before JSON Web Tokens. This is like rolling your own memory for cookies and sessions on the server. Like, oh my God. And even with JSON Web Tokens, I thought that was so much easier. Even that became a pain. So it doesn't get easier than this. But if you did want to roll your own, somewhat roll your own, as in you didn't want to use a service, but you don't want to write all the code for it. There's literally a package called NextAuth that's the only thing I would ever use if I was going to roll my own auth. So highly recommend using this. I was going to show this in the course instead, but I just didn't think it would be honest of me to recommend something I wouldn't use. So I wouldn't use it. I just pick a service. I just want to get back to writing the code of my app. I don't want to be innovating on auth. To me, auth is the same that it's always ever going to be. And when it changes, I want the experts to figure it out, not me.